Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot, and days of old lang syne? For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne, we'll take a cup of kindness yet, for days of old lang syne.
Oh, what a beautiful place this is. I've forgotten how lovely a pauper cemetery is in the daytime. It's almost as lovely that as it is at night. You see these tombstones all lined up in a row, but they're not important enough for nobody to put no names on them. They just put numbers, because these people didn't care to nobody. They didn't care to nobody but Ould Badger, that is. This would bring a tear to your eye, I'm sure. It does bring a tear to my eye. You're thinking about all the poor people that are buried here. But while you see sadness and you looking through your tears, I see opportunity and the satisfaction of a job well done. I've chanced for these poor folks that was never nothing to nobody to amount to something, and to be some good for humankind, and have a purpose in their after their life is gone. Now you don't need to be afraid of me, because I ain't gonna hurt none of you, because you're still breathing, and this is probably the only opportunity you're going to have to see Ould Badger, because most times I'm not out in the daytime. By this time of morning, I'm long asleep, because my work has been done at night. Badger, that's my name, because that's what they call me, because I like digging things up, and Badger because you don't want to back me into a corner. That ain't my real name. The name that my mom gave me was Humphrey Crispin Higgins, but that name's been left behind a long time ago. I haven't gone by that name since I was 6. My poor mother came to this country as a transport from London. The king sent her over for doing a little bit of light finger work. But she was standing on trial. She pled the belly to prevent being sent over, but it weren't true, evidently. And so they transported her over. And then when she arrived at this country and she left her indenture, I guess she ran away from her indenture. Then I was born not long after. Me and Mom, we was there in the streets of Philadelphia, making a good living for herself. But when I was 6, she ended up in a grave like this. And that was a sad, sad time. Well, it wasn't made too sad, because Mom had taught me everything that I needed to be able to survive. And even as a 6-year-old, I would go out and I would do the work, and I would come in and I would then give her the coin that I had earned during the day, and then a lot of times she would then spend that coin on gin and stuff like that. But now that she was gone there when I was 6, I realized that I had more coin in my hand than I had before. So even there at 6, they started calling me a little badger, because I was a mean little kitchen cove. And it wasn't very long before I had my own gang of kitchen coves running there with me, and we was up and down the streets, and we was stealing wipes and picking pockets and doing that light finger work that my mother taught me how to do so well. So by the time I was about 13 years old, I had my own gang, and we was a formidable crew, and we took care of ourselves, and we lived there on the streets. We never looked back. Well, by the time I was about 18, then the opportunities came with the canting crews, and a more formal relationship with those, and I did everything that they asked. So the upright man would come to me, and he would say, "Oh, Badger, I need you to go," and I would go. Now, I spent some time in jail occasionally, but I didn't do nothing that was bad enough to be hung for. I hung with that group for now on 20 years. You know, and I was thinking back all that time. I was thinking back to those first 6 years with my mother, and we would be stealing this or taking care of that, and thinking about those times and just remembering the good times that I had with Mom. It was good times. Good times. But speaking of my mother, you know, like I said, she always took that money that I earned. So when it came time to get old enough to marry and such, I never did, because I didn't want no other woman taking my money away from me, and I ain't met nobody that I couldn't live without. So how did I end up in such a prosperous situation? You might be asking. Well, let me tell you this tale. Well, me and the boys that one day we was relaxing in the Hedge Tavern after a good time on the streets. Oh yes, and there was some well dressed young men came in, and one of them came up to me. I don't know why he picked me out of the crowd. I suppose he recognized the potential talent that I have, and he came up and he says, "I have a proposition for you. I'm not going to take no propositions from our nice little crow, but he kind of piqued my interest in saying that he had a task that he needed done." I said, "Well, what is it?" And he told me that he was a student in an anatomy school, and that they were preparing to learn about the anatomy of the human body, and he had to go procure himself a sample to be able to study on. And so he said, "I don't know how to do this, and I need somebody to come and help me." And he said, I'll pay you several shillings for doing this. And I thought, well, that's not a bad amount of money for an hour or so's work. And I said, all right, I'll go with you. And so off we went. We went to a cemetery, and there was a fresh grave right there. And he said, all right, we're going to take this one out. I said, all right, you got a shovel? He said, no, I didn't bring no shovel. And I said, what are you going to do about it being daylight? I said, have you not thought about this? Aren't you somebody going to be upset if we go taking this fella out of this hole that they put him in? And he said, well, you're probably right. So I said, tell you what, we'll come back tonight, and I'll bring a couple of my boys along with me, because I saw an opportunity coming. I saw the potential for an opportunity. So we came that night, and we dug and we retrieved that corpse out of that box, took it off to the anatomy school. And when we got there was a bunch of other fine looking fellas there. And I, again, the Ould Badger, I'm a thinking man. I'm a thinking man because, I always got a plan going. And so I said, you fellas need samples too? And they said, we sure do. And I said, well, what would this be worth to you? And we settled on a price of several pounds for each one, because I could tell that these fellas had some coin in their pocket. And so that next night we went out and we procured some more samples, and that started for the Ould Badger a career, and we've gone, and now these 10 years. Yeah. So it wasn't very long before I gathered together 4 or 5 of my closest associates, and we became a professional resurrection crew. Now you might be thinking, Badger, you're nothing but an old grave robber. And oh, that's an ugly word. That ain't what we are. Because a grave robber is somebody that digs into the grave and takes the stuff that belongs to that poor dead person. And that is illegal. And they'll hang you for that. All we do is take the body. Because the law says the body don't belong to nobody, because the person that owns it is dead. So you see, it ain't exactly illegal to take the body out. But you might be asking, well, then why do you do your work at night? It's because I'm such a caring person, because I care about these families that have lost their loved ones. Haven't they suffered enough? And if they thought that somebody was here digging up their dearly departed, they would be upset and downcast. So that's why we do our work at night, and kind of quiet like. Unfortunately, grave robber is not the only thing that we get called. Some people call us real ugly words like body snatchers or ghouls. Me? A ghoul? Oh, that's so cruel and hurtful. I would prefer to refer to myself as a resurrectionist, because that's what I do. I resurrect the dead to be of some good to society, whether or not they were before or not. And I like to think of myself as a humanitarian, because I'm doing good for humankind. Let me ask you a question. Do you want to go to a doctor that ain't never practiced on a real specimen? You go to a doctor and he says, well, I got to cut you open, but I've never seen the inside of a person before. This ought to be grand fun. So do you mind if I make the hole a little bigger and look around while I'm in there? He'll be going, oh, what happens if I poke here? No, you want to go to a doctor that isn't one of my customers. In fact, you go to your doctor, the first question you need to ask him is, do you know Ould Badger? And if he says yes, I can assure you that he has practiced on fresh specimens that I have supplied. And he knows where all the pieces and the parts go and where they belong. So you see, what I'm doing is noble. It is a noble profession that we have chosen. It is one that is advancing the medical sciences far beyond where they would normally be. So that's why you find me this morning in a pauper cemetery, scoping out the possibilities, looking to see what's coming, because you see in the pauper cemetery they don't care so much. If we go to a church graveyard, then they're going to do things to prevent us from doing our noble deed. They're going to put traps in. They're going to put cemetery guns in. They're going to put coffin torpedoes, things that make the night really, really bad. And we would prefer to come here, because here there is no graveyard shift. There's nobody watching these graves at night. Nobody cares about these people. So they're kind of here for the picking, as it were. Besides that, whether we're in a pauper cemetery or a church graveyard, we are professionals. And when we leave, we're going to put everything back just exactly the way that it was, because we don't want anybody to be upset by the fact that someone dearly departed has been taken from the grave. So you're interested, I see. I see you over there thinking that this might be a career that you would like to have a part of. You see the good that we're doing for humankind. And so you would like to come to work for me. Well, I only have 3 rules that you have to follow. Rule number 1 is there is no drinking on the job. Drunks are noisy and dangerous. You can be drunk all day long, I don't care, but when 10 o'clock comes at night, you'd better be sober. Why, I had an associate, his name was Lucky, and he showed up for work drunk a few weeks ago, fell in a hole and busted his neck. Went to visit old Scratch before anybody knew what had happened. I guess old Lucky wasn't too lucky, was he? But and following along in my motto of waste not, want not, we did take him to the surgeons and sold him for 12 pounds. 12 pounds, that's what we're making now. You keep that in mind. So rule number 1 is no drinking on the job. Rule number 2 is you're going to come into a lot of money really fast. And you can't go flaunting it around. Because if you go flaunting your money around buying fine clothes and things for your fine wife or girlfriend or whoever, there are people going to talk, and they're going to say you come into money, and you don't go from low class to high class overnight. In fact, you don't go there at all. Where the good Lord puts you, that's where you're going to end up your entire life. So you put your money away, you hide it, and then once you've got enough, you be a judge of how long you want to work with it. Then you go off to another city, 50, 60 miles away, where nobody knows you, and you can come in as a wealthy person, and nobody will know any difference. 12 pounds. 12 pounds we're getting for a body. You know how much that is, don't you? Now, you don't know how much that is, because you're just a poor person standing over there. You ain't never worked a day in your life. Well, if you was a soldier in the Army, you might be making 15 pounds a year if you get paid. And we're getting 12 pounds a body. And I got 3 lined up for tonight. So that means 36 pounds that we'll split amongst us. Not a bad night's work, do you think? So that's why you got to keep from flaunting that money around. And then rule number 3 kind of goes right along with that. Is don't you go talking to nobody about this offer that Badger is making to you. Remember I told you you didn't have nothing to fear about Ould Badger? Well, let me tell you. If you go out on the streets flapping your lips about this fine opportunity that I'm offering you, or this professional, noble career that Ould Badger has, then you best be watching yourself. Because if you do, Ould Badger will be coming for you. And I know where my next 12 pounds will be coming from. You understand what I'm saying to you? So now, are you interested? Are you interested in this line of work? Are you interested in joining up Ould Badger? Are you interested in being noble? Then meet me at the Hedge Tavern known as the Blind Beggar about Darkman's. Now that's 9 o'clock for you. And we'll go and do some work. But you just remember, don't you go flapping your lips, or Ould Badger will be coming for you.
For days of Auld Lang Syne, for Auld Lang Syne, my dear, for Auld Lang Syne, we'll take a cup of kindness yet. For days of Auld Lang